Chapter 23. The Abominable Sacrifice. How could anything so gruesome as child sacrifice, so morally abhorrent, and so obviously contrary to all that undergirds human existence, be embraced and practiced by any people or nation? The most pagan of acts. In the case of the pagan world, it was the result of God's absence. In the case of Israel, it was the result of turning from God's presence. And yet, contrary to what we might expect, the practice was not unique or exceptional. Rather, it was nearly universal. It could be found in the temples of ancient Egypt to the shrines of Tahiti, from the altars of Mesopotamia to the hanging trees of Germany, from India to Hawaii, from West Africa to Tibet, from the Aztecs to the Celts, from the Druids to the Mongolians, and among countless other peoples in countless other lands. Human and child sacrifice were symptomatic of pagan culture, thought, and values, and the overall devaluation and degradation of life. Beyond sacrifice, the young were especially vulnerable in pagan culture to mistreatment, abuse, and murder. Infants with deformities or disabilities were commonly discarded by their parents, left in garbage dumps, drowned in rivers, exposed to the elements, or abandoned to wild animals. The disposable life. Even children born perfectly healthy could be murdered if, for some reason, they were not found desirable or wanted by their parents. And even some of the most revered philosophers and esteemed leaders of the ancient world could endorse or decree the death of innocent children. It was not safe to be a child in the ancient pagan world. One could be murdered at the moment of one's birth, or before or after. It was not at all uncommon for children to be killed in their mother's wombs. With the pagan devaluation of human life came a bent toward death, the spirit of Moloch. Therefore, when a nation or civilization turns away from God, we can expect the same values and horrors to be revived. It is no accident that the same nation that turned from Christian faith and replaced biblical values with pagan ones, Nazi Germany, came to view the sickly and weak as contemptible and disposable, then set out to exterminate them. So too when the Soviet government purged biblical values from Russia, human life likewise became disposable. In each case, the departure from biblical values to pagan or neo-pagan values resulted in the murder of millions. When I was made in secret, the biblical view of life, children, and the weak could not have been more different than that of the pagan world. From the very opening chapters of the Bible, it was established that human life was created in the image of God. Thus every human life, whether young or old, male or female, strong or weak, rich or poor, healthy or infirm, was of infinite value. The idea of slaughtering one's children on the altars of the gods was forbidden, abhorrent, and an abomination. The Lord was said to have carried Israel as a man carries his son. Children were now to be viewed as a gift from the Lord. They were thus to be cherished and treasured. life was to be treated as precious and sacred from the moment of conception, so is the Psalms King David could write. You formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret. And in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. For such is the kingdom. In the New Testament, the status of the weak, the infirm, or the defenseless was further elevated. Jesus comforted the weak, embraced the outcast, and healed the sick. As for children, their value was elevated to a level previously unknown in human history. He said this, "Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." And again, I say to you, unless you become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me. The teachings of your gods. So with the entrance of the gospel into the pagan world, there came an inevitable collision of values over the sanctity of human life, the value of women, the treatment of the weak, the care of the sick, and the worth of protection of children, born and unborn. Wherever human sacrifice was performed, the ascendancy of the gospel would bring the practice to an end. In the case of the Roman Empire, it was the Christian faith that caused the practice of infanticide, the killing of little children, to disappear. As to the killing of unborn children, those restrictions had at times been enacted over the issue of parental rights. The act was widely accepted and practiced. But with the coming of the gospel, the practice of killing children, born or unborn, was challenged. The early Christian writer Lactantius wrote this of the pagan world's murder of its children. They either strangle the sons born from themselves, or if they are too pious, they expose them. Can those persons be considered innocent who expose their own offspring as prey for dogs? And the early Christian apologist Marcus Minucius Felix wrote of the link of abortion and the pagan gods. So they commit murder before they bring forth, and these things assuredly come down from the teaching of your gods. The murder of little children came down from the teaching of their gods. If Molech returned, it was the Christian faith and the biblical valuing of human life that brought protection to young and unborn children and the definitive end of the large-scale murder. So when the gods were cast out of Western civilization, a spirit of death went with them. The gospel had removed their altars and the blood that had stained them. As the gods departed, lives were saved. Prisoners, slaves, and little children were now spared from being slaughtered as human sacrifices. Countless others were saved from being murdered outright or left out to die in the wilderness as babies, and still others were saved from being killed in their mothers' wombs. The gods of death were sent into exile. Among them was Molech, but if the gods and spirits departed, as the civilizations they had once possessed had turned to God, what would then happen if those same civilizations should turn away from God? The gods of death would return, then Molech would return. And if Moloch returned, would he not again require blood and a human sacrifice? And according to the parable, would not his latter work be worse than his first? And if the ancient destroyer returned, what would happen to the children?